Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. Thank you for joining me today for our webinar, Infrastructure Monitoring with Netdata Cloud. We'll give it a minute here as people are coming in. The attendees are coming in right now. And we'll go over a couple of housekeeping details before we get started. My name is Amy Abatangle, and I'm the Chief Marketing Officer at Netdata. I'll be your host today. Joining me is Ryan Duffield, VP of Product. Ryan will be presenting the features and benefits of Netdata. Before we get started, I'd like to cover a few operational details. You can submit questions to our team throughout the webinar by using the question and answer panel in Zoom. After the webinar, we'll be sending out a link to the recording. And if there are any questions we were unable to answer, you can join us after the webinar on our forums at community.netdata.cloud. Okay, Ryan, I think we're ready to go.
Great, thank you very much, Amy, and thanks to all of you for joining our very first webinar. It's very exciting. So today I'll be reviewing some new features that we just released in the latest version of our open source agent. And then I'll be giving an overview of our latest software as a service offering called Netdata Cloud that we just launched a few months ago. So here's the agenda for today. So as I mentioned, first we'll go through a couple of features to highlight in the newest version of the open source agent, version 1.24. And then we'll get into Netdata Cloud. So I'll talk about why we decided to build Cloud, how the agent and Cloud work together and complement one another and the implications of that, the features and benefits of Cloud, and then we'll dive into a demonstration to showcase all of its capabilities. Finally, as Amy mentioned, we should have lots of time for Q&A towards the end of the webinar. But if you already have a question, or if anything you see or hear today sparks a question, please keep them coming and we'll do our best to answer as many as we can. Okay, so the two features to highlight in the latest version of the open source agent are our new Prometheus collector, as well as multi-host database mode. So we've added a new collector for Prometheus metrics. So this means that the agent can now auto-detect up to 600 Prometheus endpoints, and the agent will auto-generate charts for meaningful representation of those metrics. Of course, in addition to the thousands of metrics that the agent already collects. I also want to note that in an upcoming release of the agent, there will be more capabilities to classify and group all of these metrics. And secondly, we also released our multi-host database mode. So this improves our clustering and streaming support, allowing for more complicated topologies, and allowing you to stream metrics from, for example, child nodes to a parent node. So some common use cases for this. So one is if you have a highly ephemeral infrastructure where nodes are sort of coming in and out of existence, but you want to retain all the metrics that were collected on those nodes, you can stream that data to perhaps a more permanent parent node, so you can retain those metrics longer term. Another use case is having longer attention period for your metrics. So streaming from child nodes to a parent node so that you can keep perhaps years worth of metrics data on a server that has more disk space. So please check out our blog. There is an article with more details about these two features, as well as links to the associated documentation on our Learn site. All right, so now let's dive into Netdata Cloud, which, as I mentioned, we launched a few months ago. So historically, Netdata has offered an open source agent, and the goal with the open source agent has always been to be the best single node monitoring tool on the planet. But it is just that, it's single node monitoring. So with Netdata Cloud, we wanted to offer the ability to see metrics across multiple nodes in real time, and offer multi-node infrastructure monitoring. We also wanted to offer the ability for you and your team members to collaborate and troubleshoot together. So those are the goals of Netdata Cloud. So with that in mind, how do the agent and cloud work together? Well, when you use cloud, you'll first want to declare ownership of your nodes and claim them to a space. So when I go into the demonstration later, I'll explain what a space is. But this is a way of securing and controlling access to your agents. Anyone who's using the agent today knows that it ships with an out-of-the-box web UI. And it can sometimes be cumbersome or a little difficult to secure access to that, having to install something like Nginx and securing it yourself. So cloud is the solution to that problem. You claim an agent, and you can then control who can actually view the metrics of that agent. This also sets up a secure connection between your agents and cloud. So what this means is data is streamed in real time to cloud. So nothing is stored centrally. No metrics are stored centrally on cloud. So as you're viewing the UI, which I'll demonstrate, that data is actually being streamed in real time from all of your agents. So before the demo, just to review the features and benefits, you can invite your team to collaborate and troubleshoot together. You can organize and categorize your nodes and basically structure them any way you see fit. You can see like metrics across your entire infrastructure. So instead of having to have, for example, single browser tabs for each node, you can now view all of your nodes in one place. You can build dashboards for the metrics that you care about, and you can share those dashboards with your team members. Very soon, this is launching soon. You'll be able to get notified for alarms that get triggered. So the alternative right now, you can configure notifications on an agent-by-agent basis. But very soon, you'll be able to configure notifications for the alarms you care about directly from cloud. And of course, all of this is offered for free. So everything that you see today and everything that we've defined as basically core infrastructure monitoring and troubleshooting is offered for free. All right, and with that, let's jump into the demo. Okay. So for the purposes of this demonstration, I'd like you all to imagine that I'm a web developer, and I've built and I maintain a very small web application. And that web application is deployed across two web servers and 2 database servers. And I'd like to invite my team to help troubleshoot. I've got some specialists who are web application developers, and I have a DBA. And we want to be able to see our whole infrastructure and troubleshoot issues that might come up together. So this is the main user interface. I've already signed in here using my Google account. Netdata Cloud supports Google, GitHub, and email-based authentication. So the first thing that I'll want to do is create a space. And you can think of a space as the highest level organizational container in cloud. So typically this will represent an organization, a company, my team, something like that. Ultimately, it's the thing that I will invite my team members to and add my nodes to. So I'll create a space here. And because I'm monitoring my web application, I'll call it Creatively Web App. So there we go. So now you can see on the left-hand side, this web app space that I've created. You can see some other spaces here that I've been invited to in the past, but we'll focus on the web app space. You'll also notice that it created a default war room called General. So war rooms are another sort of container that you can use to organize and structure nodes and teams and that sort of thing. So I'll create another war room later, but I think for now, the general one is okay. So the next thing I want to do, I want to invite members of my team. So to do that, I'm going to go into my space and say invite more users. And I think I've got a few team members here in the webinar, so I'm going to invite Joel. I'll invite Jennifer. And I'll invite Amy as well. So there we go. And I'll just hit send up here. So what that has done is it's actually sent an email notification to my team members. So they'll receive a link. Once they click the link, they'll automatically be added to this war room once they sign in. And we'll see if anyone accepts invitations during the rest of the demo. So I'll pause there for a moment. Are there any questions so far? And you can see here that Jennifer has joined both my space and this general room.
Hey, Ryan, we had a couple of questions that aren't specifically about what you're demoing right now, but if we want to pause briefly, there were a couple questions about whether or not Netdata Cloud could be used in an on-premises environment.
Yeah, great question. It currently cannot be used on-prem. This is something that we're looking at, but it's not something that's supported today.
Great. There was also a question about whether or not Netdata could monitor Windows.
It can. So there are a few collectors out there, and I apologize, I don't know exactly what they're called, but there are ways of collecting Windows information and WMI stuff through different collectors, but there is no local installable agent that goes onto Windows machines right now.
Okay, great. I think we're caught up on questions right now.
Cool, great. So I don't know if you all saw the toast notifications, but some of my team members have actually joined my war room, which is great. So the next thing I want to do is add some nodes so I can actually start to see some metrics and alarms and that sort of thing. So I'll just click this add button here. And this is going to display a command that I can run on my nodes. So because I have a small fleet of servers, I just have the 4 that I mentioned. I'm going to run this command manually. But we do support, or Netdata Cloud does support ways of automating this. So there are different commands as well for if you're using Docker or container orchestration, or if you're using something like Terraform or some way of automatically spinning up servers and tearing them down. There are ways to automate this claiming process as well. But as I said, I'm going to run this manually, so I'm going to copy this command here. There we go. And I'll demonstrate the command just on a single server here, but in the background, I'm going to run this command on my additional servers. So I'll run that. And simultaneously, I'm running this on my 3 other servers. And so pretty quickly, we should start to see servers being added to this war room. So there's web 1, which is the one I just ran it on. And we should see, there we go. There's my other web server and a couple of database servers. This one should come online pretty quickly. So now that I've claimed my nodes, you can see that the default war room view has been populated with certain metrics by default. So Netdata Cloud has chosen CPU utilization, memory, disk I/O, and network bandwidth. But I can choose to show or hide some of these metrics. So I can, if I'm not interested in disk I/O, I can hide that column by just clicking on the checkbox, or I can bring it back. Or if I, never want to see this, I can edit the metric, delete it, and remove it entirely. There we go. But there are a couple of metrics that, as the sort of maintainer of this application, I do want to add. They're metrics that have come up in the past that have been relevant when dealing with an issue. So I don't exactly remember the names, but let's see if I can add them. So I'll click on this gear icon, click on the plus. So I remember one was something to do with TCP retransmits. This was an indication of some network problems between my web servers and my database servers. So I'm just going to type in retransmit. Yeah, I think that's the one. There we go. And I'll rename this to, I'll save that. So now we can see that metric across all of my servers. And the other one had to do with file descriptors. So let's see, there it is, file descriptors. So very quickly now I can see the same metric across my entire fleet of servers. So some additional things I can do here, I can look back in time. So I can go back, for example, 15 minutes all the way up to 30 days. Now these servers are pretty new, so probably only have a few hours worth of data here. Yeah, so I'll just do 1 hour. One thing I'll note as well is there will be a more advanced date time picker on this screen very soon, so that I can choose very precise, date and times. I can also filter this list, so I can filter by services that are available on it, like MySQL, or I can filter by name. So if I just want to see my database servers, I can do that. Okay, so in addition to this view, which is kind of a high-level overview of my entire infrastructure, I can dig into individual nodes as well. And I'm not sure why DB1 is still not reporting, but that's probably a problem with that database server. I'm happy that I have two for some redundancy. But I'll dig into, let's say, Web 1. So if you've used the Netdata open source agent, this view should be very familiar to you. So I have a couple of different ways of navigating this. I can scroll through and look at charts individually. I can drill down to the one I'm interested in. So in those two examples that I gave, I can go to eBPF, socket, and there's that retransmit one, for example. So, and again, all of these metrics are being streamed as I'm viewing them in real time from the agents directly. Nothing's being stored centrally in Netdata Cloud. I can do other things like this, like pan and zoom to dig into things like that. So I said I created another war room. I'm interested in splitting this up a little bit. I'd like my web developers to have their own room, and I'd like my DBA to have a separate room. So I can do that here just by clicking the plus button in my war rooms, and I'll say, let's create one for the database team first. So I'll call it database, add a room. And specifically in this one, I only want those database servers. So I don't want to see the web servers at all. So I'll check off the two database servers, click add, and now we can see that the general room has everything, but the database room just has my database servers. I can also invite only the people that would be relevant to this. So if I click up here and manage my war room and go to users, you can see right now that I'm the only user in this room, but I want to add my DBA. And today the DBA will be Joel. So I'll add him to this room. There we go. So he should now get an email with a link to join this room, and he can help me with my database problems. There we go. he just joined. And I'll quickly do the same thing for my web server. So I'll create another war room here called web, and I'll add just the web servers, and I'll invite just the members of my web team, who today will be Jennifer and Amy. So there we go. So they've joined that room. So this is a really nice way for me to just organize my teams and my servers into things that make sense for me. So everything that I've shown here is considered the node view in a war room, but I can also create some custom dashboards to surface just the metrics that I care about, and I can publish that dashboard to members of my team. So I'm going to go up to the War Room navigation, and you can see dashboards. So I'm going to add a new one. And we'll call this one metrics for incidents. I guess I'll call it metrics for incident. And I'm going to add charts for some of those same metrics that I added in my War Room. So because I'm in the web room, this is just for only the web servers. So I'll choose web 1, and I'll choose transmit again. So I'll add that chart. And I'll do the same thing for web 2. There we go. And so now I can see a more detailed chart than is offered in the node view. I can see the dimensions, more of the timeline, and across both servers. I can also add some helpful text. So I could say save that. And I can also reorganize things. So if I want my text up here and my 2 dashboards here, there we go. My 2 charts, sorry. So now I'm going to run a command on, let's see, we'll do it on DB2, because the last thing I want to demonstrate is the alarms. So while I generate an alarm here, I'll pause. Are there any other questions that I can field?
We've got a lot of questions coming in very quickly, so I'll try to sort through a few here that have been asked multiple times, and then maybe we can revisit some after the demo concludes. So we had a couple people asking about login options, whether there were other ways planned in the future to authenticate, and whether or not username passwords were going to be available, or just a quick explanation of the current authentication process with email.
Sure. So as I mentioned right now, if you have a Google account or a GitHub account, you can use those authentication methods. We do support email authentication right now, but we have heard the feedback that it's somewhat difficult to use. So we are looking at adding the ability to simply have an email and password that you can use rather than the sort of one-time use token link that's sent today. So that is something that we're looking at adding.
Great. We also had questions about the possibility in the future of a native app for, say, Android or iOS.
Yes, so I mentioned that we're launching notifications very soon. So the supported channel will be email to start. But we do plan on adding additional notification channels. So integrating with, for example, OpsGenie or PagerDuty if you want to receive a notification. One of the other channels that we're looking at is the ability to receive a push notification. So either on your Android device or your iOS device, being able to receive push notifications for alarms like the one that just triggered here. So I think, yes, it is in the plans, but the first use case that we're looking at tackling with a native app is notifications, and then slowly building from there.
Okay, great. We also had a question about the ability to search for and join war rooms if you're in a team.
Great question. This is not something that's supported today, but we do have plans to add that. So basically a war room browser where you can see a list of war rooms and search. So I think actually what I can do after this webinar is post in our community forum with some potential designs that we've put together for that. But yes, that's something to sort of ease discoverability of all the different war rooms that you could have. That's definitely something we're looking at as well.
Great. The last one I'll throw over right now. There were a number of questions about monitoring a variety of different types of systems, for example, firewalls, routers, et cetera. Maybe just we could mention briefly where folks could check out all of our integrations. You can see those both on www.netdata.cloud as well as in our documentation at learn.netdata.cloud, but I'm not sure if you wanted to call out specific integrations.
I don't think I have anything to call it specifically, but yeah, I'd recommend, like you said, going to our Learn site and reading some of the integration guides there.
Okay, great.
Okay, cool. So to conclude the demo, I wanted to show how alarms are surfaced for me in Netdata Cloud. So I've triggered 3 alarms here just by pegging the CPU on my DB2 node. So what happens here is there's a badge next to the relevant room. So the web room, there are no alarms because none of these servers are affected right now. But you can see the general room is, and so is the database room because they both contain this DB2 server. So this is yellow because these alarms are in a warning state. If they were in critical, it would be red. You can also see in the breadcrumb navigation the number of nodes affected by these different alarm types. So I have an unreachable node, which, as we saw, just has been offline since the beginning of the demo, and then one that is in a warning state. So I can click on this badge. Alternatively, I can click up here to see all of my alarms. But oh, now this one, this is great. Now this one is critical. So if I click this will actually filter my alarm list down to the server in question, or the node in question, which is DB2. You can see the metric that's affected, the value that triggered the alarm. And I can do other things just by clicking on these 3 dots. I can view the alarm info. So if I want to see how this alarm is configured, I don't have to go directly into the machine. I can actually see here that these are all of the configuration settings. And here's where that's defined on that node in this configuration file. And I can go directly to the node. So if I want to really dig into what's going on this DB2 node, I can go directly to it and start to troubleshoot directly. So I'll conclude there. And as I mentioned, all of this is free, so you can go to www.netdata.cloud and just click on the Sign into Cloud link and start monitoring your infrastructure. So thanks.
Great. We have a few more questions. I think we have some time to field a few if you're game. We had a question about removing nodes, especially in the case of ephemeral nodes that may come and go.
There are two scenarios here, I think. So you can remove nodes from a war room, and I can show you how to do that. So if I, for example, didn't want this DB1 node in this room anymore because it's unreachable, I can manage the room, go to nodes, find DB1 here, and remove it this way. So now it's gone, and I don't have to worry about it again. I could do the same thing here. So that's the first scenario. That's how to remove it from a war room. But it does remain in the space. So if I go into my space management and go into nodes, all of these nodes, this list is basically static. So we're working on improvements to this, being able to unclaim a node, for example, so you can get it out of this list and completely forget about the node. That's actually something that we're working on now. Right now, that's how you would do it, is just remove it from the war room, and it'll remain in this list.
Okay, we had a question about whether or not there was a way to group correlated metrics and be able to set dependencies between them.
I'll try to answer that question in a couple of ways, and hopefully this makes sense. So one of the things, I didn't save my dashboard, but one of the things we're working on is the ability to have composite charts. So when I was adding charts to a dashboard, I was adding them one at a time for the same metric for each node. So one thing we're working on now is the ability to have the same metric across all nodes in a single chart. So that way you can see like dimensions across a bunch of different servers in a single chart. So that's one way, one thing that we're working on now that should help with that problem, I think.
Another question was, is it possible to automatically create a war room based on alarms?
There is not right now. That is a great idea, though. One of the use cases we think is a good one for war rooms is spinning one up in the case of an incident. So if I had an incident right now, I could say something like incident 2020, 25, and we could all go in here, start to add servers and start to troubleshoot an incident. But no, that's a very good idea. That's something that we should look at, I think, is automatically generating things based on different states.
We also had a question about whether or not there's a future plan to do auto discovery to avoid having to claim node by node.
Yes, there is a plan around that, but I apologize. It's kind of beyond my technical ability. I don't know if there's someone on the panel that can answer that.
We can always we can address that as well on the community forums afterwards.
Sure.
We had a question. I think even I can answer this one about what does the pricing model look like and when will that be revealed? So right now we don't have a pricing model. Everything that you've seen demonstrated here today is free. The features that we're looking at rolling out in the future would be aimed at enterprises and around things like auditability and control. We won't be ready to share pricing on that for some time. But if you'd like to jump on the forums, we can get into a little bit more of a discussion. But all the things you've seen here today are free, and you know, you can kick the tires on it by jumping over to www.netdata.cloud and creating an account. Let me see, we've got a few more questions coming in here. Let me just run through these real quick. We had some, even if you just address it at a high level, Ryan, I think there were some concerns about how the metadata transmission from nodes to the cloud was secured. So if you could just sort of mention that secure link.
Yeah, so the secure link uses secure WebSockets, and I don't know if you noticed when I claimed, there's some details here about the actual like key generation, and everything's done over TLS. So it is a secure connection, and we don't store, as I mentioned, we don't store any of the metrics data. There obviously is, as was implied by the question, some metadata that is stored. So things like the node names and war room names and that sort of thing. But I think we have a more detailed write-up in the documentation as well. If you look up Agent Cloud link, that has a lot of details about how it's secured and what kind of data is actually being transmitted.
There was a question about whether or not the cloud service will have a publicly available API in the future.
Yes, it will. It will. And I think that would help address some of the other questions around automation. So if we can't, or if we don't in cloud automatically, for example, create a war room based on an alarm state, if there was a public REST API, for example, you could do that on your own. So yes, that is something that's definitely on the roadmap. I don't have an ETA for that, but yeah, we'd like to offer the API as well.
There were also questions about whether or not Netdata would be available as you know, a Linux package.
Which part, sorry?
I mean, I think the question, feel free, whoever asked the question, to clarify in the Q&A panel, but I think the idea was whether or not we'd be able to be part of a distribution, the Netdata agent as part of a Linux package.
Yeah, I think we'll have to address that one either in the forums or elsewhere. I think Zach would probably be able to answer that one. I know there's some developments on the packaging strategy happening right now.
Okay. Great, and then a follow-on to that was if there were some folks asking how they could get involved in terms of contributing to Netdata. So if you check out www.netdata.cloud, on the community overview, there's some guidance for contributors, or you can head directly over to GitHub and check out Netdata there and get involved with contributing to the project. Okay, I think we have time for a couple more questions. If anybody has anything else, let me check the feed and see if anything else is coming in. I think we covered a lot of it. So I think we can probably wrap up. So I just want to thank everybody for joining us today. As we mentioned, we will be sending out a recording to the webinar so you can replay it at your leisure, and that'll go out today. Additionally, you can continue the conversation with us over at community.netdata.cloud, or if you're ready to try out Netdata for yourself, head on over to www.netdata.cloud, where you can find links to download the agent or create your free Netdata Cloud account and try things out for yourself. So thank you very much. Happy monitoring, and we look forward to joining you for our next webinar.